Over the last few weeks, the Doge effort has begun to uncover not only how massive the waste, fraud, and abuse is, but also the extent at which D.C. politicians and too many obstinate bureaucrats have coordinated to create what is essentially the largest money laundering scheme in history.
Where the money is going
No,
to.
you haven't. All y'all do is run down Elon Musk and Donald Trump, and you continuously do this, and that's why your ratings are in the tank, ma'am.
And we are back, y'all. Go ahead and hit that like button, y'all. You know, it helps us out a ton, and it helps you because it helps us. Y'all, today I'm trying a different type of format. I'm just going to let these news stories play with no additional commentary from me. This is all about Doge, about the biggest fraud in U.S. history and the ramifications of Doge's actions. Let's go ahead and get right into it.
For far too long, they've been more concerned with looking like they cared than having enough care and concern to actually do the due diligence to ensure that the tax dollars were being used wisely and effectively. And for far too long, those of us who've worked to uncover waste, fraud, and abuse have had to deal with what amounts to an unconstitutional fourth branch of permanent bureaucracy that has too often worked to ignore, obfuscate, delay, and frustrate our efforts to bring transparency and oversight. Over the last few weeks, the Doge effort has begun to uncover not only how massive the waste, fraud, and abuse is, but also the extent at which D.C. politicians and too many obstinate bureaucrats have coordinated to create what is essentially the largest money laundering scheme in history. And while Americans have been working to make ends meet, they have been using taxpayer dollars to fund unnecessary, egregious, and even evil things here at home and around the world. Thankfully, in Doge, we have a president bringing the leadership needed and a focused effort, along with the talent, technology, tools, and transparency to this waste, fraud, and abuse. And to those who would stand opposed to this effort, I would just point out, while it's understandable to find waste, fraud, and abuse that has grown and metastasized in this government even over decades, certainly accelerated over the last few years, to continue to protect it is corruption. I want to thank the chair for beginning this war on waste on this side of Pennsylvania Avenue and bringing together this committee. This effort is so important as we work to relieve the Americans, people of this burden of waste, fraud, and abuse. Mr. Talcove, you mentioned in your written statement and talked about it in your statement at the beginning that this waste, fraud, and abuse is a national security threat. And certainly one of the challenges facing us that is a national security threat is our fiscal situation. And so we have got to find ways to find savings to the American people in order to bring confidence to the bond markets, to put our country on a fiscal footing, and to reverse the curse, so to speak, that we are placing on our children and our grandchildren. You mentioned a couple threats, though. You mentioned internal threats. You said that these cases involve government employees, individuals entrusted with administering benefits who, instead of using their positions to approve fraudulent claims, override security controls, or even sell sensitive claimant information for profit. Now, this is not every federal employee for sure, but within the context of people who are trying to give their best effort, we have an internal threat. But you also mentioned transnational fraud rings, terrorist organizations, nation states, North Korea, nuclear weapons programs funded by our tax dollars, China, Nigeria, Iran, Romania, Russia, not our friends necessarily that are being funded by taxpayer dollars. Could you give us some examples of how this is happening?
Yeah. So when you think about what happened during the pandemic, $1 trillion was stolen. 70% of that money went overseas. And I can give you some examples. In a Western state, they had more people applying for unemployment insurance benefits than they had individuals over 18. The people that were stealing the money from Romania were using it to facilitate other fraud schemes that include fentanyl, that include doing things to impact our democracy. On the insider threat, right, the first thing you have to say, and my dad was a public servant, is 99% of people that work in the public sector are honest, hardworking individuals. But there are some, and what you need is data and technology to root that out. There were examples during the pandemic. There were some examples even of last week where people got into the Medicaid system in a Western state and stole $50 million in less than 4 months. So you have to have these controls in place, right? These aren't individuals stealing, Mr. Cloud. These are organized criminal groups, both domestic and transnational.
That, as you mentioned, taxpayers are being forced to fund the demise of our own country.
Jay, tell us about where you are.
Yeah, we are standing just in view of the Capitol, Kira, and you can hear the chant actually go up around me of "Do your job," and that is in reference to the protesters tell us here, the people who work in this building right here, the United States Capitol. We've also heard of chant after chant of where is Congress, asking for some kind of congressional oversight into this massive overhaul of the federal government that President Trump and Elon Musk are engineering. There are federal workers here in the crowd. Some of them have even been fired in recent days, they tell us. And one of the sentiments we hear from those here is, of course, opposition to this effort of Trump and Musk to overhaul the federal government, but also a sense that this is far from over yet. I've talked to people here. I've also talked to people across the country, federal workers, who say it's their understanding from talking to their colleagues and seeing these actions that this is only one of the early phases of these terminations, Kira, and they are preparing for many more.
So Elon Musk and Doge now seeking access to personal taxpayer data. Why do they need that information, Jay? And is that even legal?
Well, this is reporting that was driven by our Ann Flaherty, Kira. And Elon Musk and Doge have said that they want access to that information to try to look for what they say is fraud in the tax system and other allegations of impropriety like that. But this is data, as Ann has pointed out in her reporting, that is so closely guarded, not just in the federal government, but inside the IRS itself. And it underscores the fact that this has happened in federal agency after federal agency, Doge staffers either requesting access or being warned that they may request access to sensitive information. I can tell you in my own reporting, something similar has played out at the Department of Energy, which holds U.S. nuclear secrets. There was an internal email that went out to Department of Energy employees saying that if any Doge personnel asked for access to those sensitive classified areas that house U.S. nuclear secrets, to tell those Doge personnel that they don't have access. And now the Department of Energy has said no one as Doge has gotten access to nuclear secrets, but it underscores the fact that a lot of these agencies have very sensitive information, and they're being put in a position now that they've never been put in before, Karen.
Jay O'Brien there, right in the middle of the protests. We'll continue to check in with you, Jay.
Congressman, hold on. I want to go to this question because, again, Congressman, hold on. I want to go to this question because, again, it's not a question of whether waste should be rooted out of the government. So many people agree with that. But now we're seeing it's the way it's being done. The government is trying to claw back several employees who oversaw nuclear weapons after they were fired. They realized, oh, we made a mistake. We need these staffers who oversee nuclear weapons. A professor at the University of Maryland, Don Kettle, who specializes in civil service, told the Washington Post that, yes, the government is likely full of wasteful bloat, but said a clumsy fix is worse than no fix at all, saying it's like going to a meat market, getting a piece of steak, and trying to cut out the fat with a sledgehammer. That would only make a mess of the meat. Do you think, Congressman, that is a fair point, that the way this is being done is clumsy rather than methodical?
Again, you're upset about you're attacking the message carrier, not the results. You talk about nuclear secrets. You had a person who was in charge of nuclear secrets, a man who dressed up as a woman, would go into the airport and steal women's luggage, was overseeing those nuclear secrets under the Biden administration, and I never heard y'all say a peep about that. Again, man,
I don't know anything about that. I'll be transparent.
Elon Musk, you need to look it up. It's all over the internet. It's all over. He was uncharged.
But the question
is,
this is unrelated to the people overseeing nuclear weapons being fired. And Elon Musk himself said, we're moving so fast, of course there will be mistakes. The question is, some of these mistakes are really high stakes. Accidentally firing people overseeing nuclear weapons. Do you see that point?
Humans will make mistakes, ma'am, but currently these are bloated programs. You have no-show employees that are angry that they're having to go back to work, that they've moved, and they're not.
No
even
one's
in the
disagreeing.
districts of
There's
where
bloat
their
and
original
waste.
Jobs were.
No one's disagreeing
Well,
with
then
that.
why are y'all not exposing it? Have y'all even talked about, hey, Mozambique, we sent them $10 million for circumcisions? I mean, goodness gracious, ma'am. Americans are paying
We've been covering
50%
at
of their
length
salaries.
where the money is
No,
going
you
to.
haven't. All y'all do is run down Elon Musk and Donald Trump, and you continuously do this, and that's why your ratings are in the tank, ma'am. You
All
need
right,
to jump on
Congressman
board
Tim
with this
Burchett, we're
thing.
going to leave it
America
there.
is tired.
I do appreciate your time coming
Of course
on
you
and
are.
having this conversation. Thank you very much.
There is a lot of chatter about the D.C. housing market after several posts went viral online claiming the market is plummeting. So these are the images being shared claiming all these homes were up for sale in the last 14 days in D.C. Others say home prices are dropping by tens of thousands of dollars because so many laid-off federal workers are trying to sell their homes. Tonight, I spoke with the owner of Griffith Property Group at Compass Real Estate, Cameron Griffith. Griffith says based on recent data, there's no drastic change in inventory in the D.C. metro area. Prices are not dropping, and the movement happening in the market right now is typical.
You're not actually seeing that much of a difference or a delta in what we've seen before. This is typical for a spring market. Typically in a spring market, you see most sellers kind of gearing up for what we would consider a spring market, which is a higher sales or higher transaction time of the year.
We've seen thousands of federal workers fired over the last couple of weeks. The Trump administration says it's not done. How do you see this impacting the D.C. housing market eventually, later on down the line?
We're in a pretty stable market. D.C. is a pretty, I'd say we're pretty well insulated here. There could be impacts that we might see downwind. We're just not there at all right now. And I think all the posts that we're seeing that are talking about the collapse and the imminent fall of D.C., we're just not there.
All right, so he goes on to say these types of inaccurate viral posts can be damaging because they create unnecessary turbulence in the market.
Yeah, thanks for helping to clear that up.